And as we wait for these to come up, so this is the reason that we have gathered you all here today. So thank you for coming. This is to develop the science-based figures of merit for the Artemis 4 landing site. So this set of content was put together by myself, by Barbara Cohen, and Sam Lawrence. We are the co-chairs of this workshop. And we've been working very closely together, not only amongst us, but with that broader group that you heard about today that Sam talked about for the landing site selection, in order to make sure that we have science inputs that can be ingested into that complicated landing site process. Ricky, do you have the slides or do you want me to share them? I'm just seeing the clock.
Yeah, I've got them coming just a moment here.
Okay, thanks. So one of the things that's really great is that we have this opportunity at this very early stage to provide science inputs into the landing site process. So if we go full screen and then we can go to the next slide, it'd be great. Right, so this is why we're here, the FOMs. And this is one of those moments where, as Sam mentioned before, where you take a step back and take a breath and realize what we're doing. Artemis 4 is currently being planned to include a science-driven focus, which plays into landing site selection because we're working really hard to optimize the scientific return from the mission. So as Jake said before, we're sending people we know, we're sending our friends to the lunar surface, and we want to make sure that we can get as much science and information out of this from that endeavor as possible. So it's really great that at these early planning stages, science is at the table and playing a leading role. So this is why we need these scientific FOMs for the landing site evaluations. And this is why we need these metrics that will play into that process. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the reason that we've called everyone here is we are also working very hard, Barbara and I and Sam and the entire team, to leverage the scientific community and the expertise that exists within the community to optimize the site selection process. I hope that that message is coming through clear, that we are actively soliciting inputs. We are providing opportunities such as this LSSW, as Sarah mentioned in her opening remarks earlier, for the community to have inputs into these human exploration missions. So this is why we need to get these science FOMs as a result of this workshop, and we'll continue working these. And then these will feed into that landing site evaluation and prioritization process that Sam Lawrence outlined earlier today. Next slide, please. Okay, so the science-driven site selection, we're using scientific merit as an initial gate. So this is really important because we are really driving home the science. That's why we spent the time today going over the SPA and other scientific objectives that Barbara presented earlier. That's our first gate. And then those sites with high scientific relevance will then go into that much more detailed and complicated Venn diagram chart that you saw earlier for engineering, landing site safety, all the different factors, the complicated factors that go into the human landing site selection process. So the FOMs that we talk about today should cover the science objectives for the mission. We had an overview of that Barbara presented. That includes the lunar and planetary science focus and the South Pole Aitken Basin focus that we've been talking about, as well as other high priority science objectives, including but not limited to volatiles, planetary evolution, regolith processes, heliophysics, biologic and physical sciences, right? Because when we think about project science for Artemis 4, it is broader than just SPA and it includes all of these other things as well. So we want to make sure that we serve each of these communities well. Next slide, please. Okay, so how are we going to develop FOMs? Well, this is why we have structured this LSSW to have the breakout sessions, which will be the next thing that we do. And this is where we will have active discussion and collaboration to develop and or suggest these figures of merit that we could incorporate into the process for evaluating and selecting landing sites for Artemis 4. Another part of this, we realized when we saw those talks, just in the last session, there's a lot of data and data analysis that goes into the science. So as part of this workshop, it is fair game to discuss data analysis that's required to enable the development of or how to evaluate sites from these FOMs. Like, what do you have to do to get the science out? So feedback on that is also welcome within the breakout sessions in the different groups. Take notes. It can go into your metrics. It can go into your report documentation. As a reminder, start thinking about which breakout group is of most interest to you that you might want to join. We have 4 today: SPA geochronology, SPA composition, SPA geophysics, and then the non-SPA science, which is these other topics that we just mentioned. So feel free to join one or more of those groups. Next slide, please. Okay, not a FOM. What is not a FOM? What are we not looking for today? It has been mentioned several times. It is outside the scope of this workshop to discuss specific landing sites. Don't say, I want to go to Haworth Crater. What we really want to know is why. Why do you pick that site? What is the scientific importance? What are the characteristics that make that a good landing site? Barbara mentioned this earlier too. That's what the figure of merit is. It's telling us the why. Why is that scientifically interesting? We need these quantifiable FOMs to optimize the Artemis 4 science, because as you can imagine, when we're inputting science into that whole site selection process, we have to have some metrics where we can quantify, why these landing sites are good for science and be able to demonstrate that. These sites will be evaluated through the full NASA site selection process for engineering, landing site safety, et cetera, et cetera. That is not what we are talking about here. So we do not need to talk about, a certain site. We don't have to talk about its trafficability, its accessibility, et cetera, et cetera. We are really focused today on the science and what makes a site good for science for Artemis 4. That's what a FOM is. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just an example. We wanted to show you the template that we'll be asking you to work with in the breakout groups. And this is just an example. This is just, to demonstrate the type of information that we're looking for that will be useful. So what is your science metric? So in this example, thorium abundance. And why? Why is that a metric? Why is that important? So we have a few bullets about the science goals, how that plays into the science priorities. Then there's the assessment. What do we know about thorium? What missions have mapped thorium? What's the level of the data? What's the resolution of the data? Like, tell us something about the assessment, what we have, maybe what we don't have. And then some examples. So here's a map that we have seen, example thorium abundances for different candidate landing regions. So this is the quad chart. You will be provided with blank versions of this to come up with your own metrics in those breakout groups to address that particular science for the mission. Next slide. I'm going to show you some of the other templates that we have for the breakout groups. So each breakout group, as listed on the website, has a leader. Been working with that leader from the community who has the background of what you're supposed to be doing and these templates already. A documentarian to help take notes, to capture discussion, think about decision points, etc. And then volunteer note takers who have volunteered to help with this, who can also help capture information that will feed into that final report. In each breakout group, we will also have one of the LSSW NASA folks just to make sure that you have the templates, you have the files that you need, answer any questions, et cetera, et cetera. So we're here to help. Next slide, please. So there will be a report out at the end of this LSSW from each of the breakout groups. So within those report outs, you will come back to tell the other breakouts what you talked about. So here's a slide for discussion summary. You can fill this in based on your particular group's conversations. We go to the next slide. The lightning talks. So each group has lightning talks, 1 or 2-ish, that will kick off the breakout group. So that'll get you some good information to start talking about for the discussions. So highlights from the lightning talks, information that you want to pull out, things that you want to highlight for the rest of the group from those talks. Next slide, please. Participants, self-explanatory, who was in your breakout group, affiliations if you like. Next slide. And then we'll give you these blank templates, which you've already seen. So if we go to the next slide. Expected outcomes. So what are we hoping to get out of this workshop? We would like to end up with the development of high-level science figures of merit that will then be used to evaluate and prioritize these candidate landing regions for the Artemis 4 mission. So that's one, that's the FOMS. And the second part is the identification of any data analysis that would be required to further develop these FOMS and or to assess the FOMS, to look at how quantifiable they are and assess different landing regions based on the figures of merit that are being provided. Those are the two big things that we are hoping to get out of this workshop. And we are very dedicated to taking the community inputs and feeding them into the NASA process. So this is one of those on-ramps where we're really hoping to get good community inputs. Next slide, please. Okay, and then we'll end up with a final report. So the LSSWs have a final report. This one will be really important because it's going to feed into the landing site work that goes beyond the Science Mission Directorate, but includes the other directorates that are a part of this and a part of Artemis as well. There's a plethora of stakeholders that I think you can appreciate from Sam's talk earlier. So we will generate a final workshop support report. It will include the suggested figures of merit based on science, that can be used to evaluate and prioritize these candidate landing regions, and also identify the data analysis that's needed to evaluate those FOMS. So the way that we are planning to get to that point, the process. So for today, each of the breakout groups, there is time in the schedule for writing. We're asking for a short, 2 to 3 page written report from the breakout groups. This is basically expanding each section of your summary presentation that you will present at the end of this workshop to the rest of the groups and to the whole workshop. But we need the report in full sentences and paragraphs and punctuation. Remember that there are abstracts and presentations, both that we've already heard today and that will be presented during the breakout sessions, that are part of the public record, the permanent record. So you can use that information, use those abstracts, use information from those talks. You don't have to come up with everything brand new in the breakouts. Like, use what you have. That's why we've had the talks and abstracts put in advance. In this write-up, please summarize the science goals and the outstanding issues based on the topic in your breakout group, drawing on all the information that you have at your disposal. Provide those candidate figures of merit that you are presenting and putting together in those quad charts, right? Again, using all the information you have at your disposal. Include full references as much as you can in a reference list. You can include figures, you can include tables. Like, remember, we want to use this in the final report, so please make it usable and make it as easy as possible to translate this into the final report. That's how you get your information into these processes. We're not looking for specific landing sites. We don't want a figure of merit that says, go to Shoemaker, right? We're looking for the science rationale, the figure of merit to say why that would be a good site. If you feel the need to talk about specific landing sites, you can, but if and only if they are illustrating the utility of a figure of merit, right? Don't come in with a laundry list of your favorite landing sites. Like, we really need to have the figures of merit. That's what's going to be useful in the landing site selection process. So the workshop co-chairs, that's myself, Sam, and Barbara. We will put together, the intro material, the recommendations that come out of this for the final report. We will take your inputs and incorporate that as well and put that into the final workshop report. So we're asking for information today, and then you can work on this later as well if that's helpful. We request your input for the report by September 30th because we have to fold all that in. There's a lot of work we have to do on the back end. And our NASA deadline internally for this deliverable is October 30th. So please help us. We are working really hard. We really want to include community input. So we need you to give it to us. So that would be great because we are committed to including your thoughts, your opinions, your FOMs, your science ideas, et cetera, into this mission, which is a really great opportunity.